This new moon in Sagittarius is revealing something very specific, where your vision is real and where it's just a story. Sitting at 28 degrees of Sagittarius, it's sitting on top of the galactic center. This is about inner vision and transformation, but not just about envisioning it, but working towards it, building the capacity to bring it into form. This new moon is squaring off with Saturn and Neptune, so anywhere in your life where blind optimism has led will be exposed. Anywhere where hope has quietly replaced the responsibility to work towards your dreams, that will become painfully obvious right now. It's a sobering new moon. It's a reality check that is meant to bring you into deeper alignment with your purpose, with the meaning of your life, and with the visions that you're holding. And Saturn asks you a simple question. What are you doing consistently to support the future that you're imagining? We're going to talk about the astrology, human design, Sabian symbol, a little bit of tarot as well, but all roads seem to lead to Rome in this scenario because they're all saying a very similar message. Faith without structure becomes avoidance, and vision without labor becomes self-deception. So let me ask you this. Where are you underestimating how much choice you still have in your situation? As many of you guys may know, I love Saturn. I don't like to pick favorites, but if I had to, Saturn's probably my favorite planet. And Saturn reminds us that we're not here to say something, when something really matters to us, we're not here to say it's too hard, it's too expensive, I just can't do it. We're here to say, what will this require of me? What do I need to do to bring this vision into reality? Many of you guys know my background. I'm an immigrant. I don't come from financial privilege. I don't come from health privilege, as many of you guys know. And I'm saying this just to say that Saturn reminds us pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Until we really understand how we ourselves are contributing to our own pain in so many ways, we may see cliches, sayings like this as bypassing. But this is not a new moon that's asking you to bypass anything. This is a real sober reality check, a real cosmic reset about your beliefs around what it will take to bring your visions to life. While a lot of my life has been me taking a lot of responsibility, this lack of responsibility is very, very elusive sometimes. For example, I stayed in a career for 9 years that I knew wasn't right while imagining this future and knowing I was meant for something bigger. But a part of me, and I think this happens to all of us, is, maybe I was spiritualizing the delay or romanticizing the waiting in some way, believing that this great big cosmic moment would come that would just save me from my doom and gloom. And that moment won't come. It just doesn't. We might have these cosmic moments where reality shifts in really big ways, but when we are actually putting in that effort, that happens tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold. Quantum leaps happen in this space where we are putting the effort, where we're putting the work in, and the universe comes to then support us through that. And this is just even shown by the Sabian symbol here, which is a fat boy mowing the lawn. And this speaks to bringing our spiritual manifestations, our spiritual visions into the mundane reality, right? In this book by Diane Roche, The Sabian Symbols, this is on my book list in the description if you'd like to get it. This is about emphasizing the willingness to work or give of self that is the primary requirement for acceptance into any group. The actual giving of attention to the little or mundane details of life. And interesting, it's that giving of the self. And in human design, this is happening in gate 10, which is the behavior of the self. Not the essence of the self, the behavior of the self. So we'll get into that. But first, I want to get a little bit into the astrology, and let's just take a look at the chart and see how this is showing up in our world, shall we? We've got this new moon. Sun and moon in Sagittarius at 28 degrees. We've got Juno, Venus, and Mercury also in Sagittarius. So a lot of desire for forward movement, right? Purpose, meaning, vision. And of course, this square to Saturn and Neptune, which I talked about in the beginning, and have also talked about extensively in other videos about this being where something is dissolving and a new structure is coming in its place at the same time. This is the grief of becoming. This is the pain of becoming, right? And I'm doing a immersion in January. I'll have more details about that coming soon, where we are going to be diving into how do we navigate this in-between space of who we were versus who we're becoming, and feeling the grief, doing the somatics, right? Saturn often brings us limitations through the body. It can also bring limitations in a lot of other ways, of course, such as money. But as Julia Cameron says in The Artist's Way, which is a book that I love, money is never an authentic block. It's always something deeper. You know, I've spoken to people who are millionaires and they still don't feel like they have enough money to quit what they're doing, that they're feeling boxed in by, to start something new. Lack of money is a scarcity wound. It goes way beyond money, right? It goes into the heart of our self-worth and our self-value. And I also think it's really unfair to assume that people who have money just don't have problems. They may have different problems, but they can still suffer just like anybody else. Once again, pain is inevitable, and the suffering to some extent is of our choosing. Are there systems and situations that are completely unfair? Absolutely. And what about our own agency, right? Mars here is in an interesting place because he's in Capricorn, exalted. However, Mars is out of bounds until January 4th, January 9th. I can't remember. So it's exalted, but he is, when Mars is out of bounds, what that means is that he's not under the reign of the sun. And thankfully, this Mars is a little bit more grounded, right? It's exalted in Capricorn, because when Mars is out of bounds and he doesn't have the direction of the sun, the king, he can get a little wild. He can start picking battles and choosing battles that aren't serving the greater life force energy, clarity, the sun, the king. However, what can also happen when Mars is out of bounds is that we can get exceptional effects from our actions, which is why it's so important for me to emphasize this Saturnian understanding of life is not fair. Absolutely, it's not. And when will you stop negotiating with reality? Mars being in Capricorn is also bringing in some of that more Saturnian effect, right? So lots of Saturn here, which I love. The ruler of this moon is Jupiter, and Jupiter is in Cancer, retrograde. So there is an integration happening of our emotional healing. There's been a lot of growth, possibly, of your emotional world, depending on where Jupiter is, especially over the last several months. Now it's integrating. The galactic center, let's talk about that for a second, right? The galactic center is the center of our Milky Way, and it's this massive black hole. And black holes are just so freaking interesting, right? Because we study them, and we do not really understand a lot about them. We think we do know that these are places where there is such density of matter where nothing can pass through. Nothing is reflected. There's no light reflected. That's why even knowing a black hole exists isn't from seeing it in the way that we normally would. It's through like gas formations. I'm not like an expert in astronomy, but I do know, because it doesn't reflect light, that it's difficult for us to see it in the same way that we may see something else. In astrology, the galactic center is a place where this is like cosmic intelligence, a lot of spiritual transformation, a lot of spiritual intuition and inner vision. And actually, at 28 degrees, there's a star called Acumen, which is traditionally associated to blindness, but metaphorically can also bring in that sense of inner vision. So it's about holding that vision internally, but then also working towards it, right? Mercury in Sagittarius will really want to just talk about their beliefs. We want to just, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. This new moon is starting a 6-month cycle. I didn't even tell you guys when it is. I did it. Yeah. December 19th, 2025. We've got a new one in Sagittarius at 28 degrees. I gotta love, how the brain works. At least my brain. It just doesn't want to talk about those things. Like, so boring. By the way, if anyone understands this energy, my moon is at 28 degrees Sagittarius. And my moon is completely unaspected by any planets except Lilith. And my moon is out of balance. So when I talk about pain and suffering, I can tell you the stories of my life, but also just if you think about a moon like that, my emotional world has always brought me a lot of suffering, right? It didn't matter. It was like a black hole inside of me. And a lot of us often feel that way. It's like nothing is enough. Nothing is enough to fill this black hole inside of us. And this is something that might be coming up during this new moon Sagittarius, is like you recognizing when will it be enough. Gosh, Saturn, man, Saturn rules decay and the dying process. And Saturn squaring this new moon gives us another impetus to work towards our goals, which is death. I have a tattoo on my arm, which I got when I was studying literature in college. And it says memento mori, which means remember your mortality, or just, I guess, a more ancient way of saying YOLO. You only live once. And I think thinking about our death is very important. It's not something that's welcomed in this life often, but it does give us a greater sense of meaning and purpose in a lot of ways. I had, in the last 5 years, I had a friend who died in her 20s, and her birthday was December 18th. And another friend who died at 32, just before she turned 33, from ALS. And it often reminds me when I think of them, because their sun was at 27 and at 28 degrees of Sagittarius, how actually this space, because it's on the galactic center, can be a very sensitive place. It can be a very painful place as well. This decan, the third decan of Sagittarius, is ruled by the Ten of Wands, which is a card that depicts a lot of responsibility. And this decan of Sagittarius is often very sensitive to the unseen realms, to the unseen in many other people. And we don't often think about Sagittarius as being so sensitive, but it is. Which, by the way, if you have anything Sagittarius, Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, I would say 25 to 29 degrees, maybe even the very beginning of cardinal signs. So Capricorn, Aries, Libra, Cancer as well, because it's so close there. You'll be feeling this a lot. But I understand that there is a pain in making our dreams a reality. There is a discomfort in having somebody say to you, you're evading your own purpose. Subconsciously, you're saying you want the thing, and you're really making a whole lot of excuses about why that thing is not happening. I know that's painful. And I have guilt motivation in human design. I'm here to make people see that they need to, there is hope and possibility, but we need to work for it. That's literally what my chart screams in a lot of ways. That didn't become super clear to me. Like a million people could have said that to me in readings, but that didn't become super clear to me until I started living my purpose, which began by slowly building the capacity to hold my dreams through nervous system work, right? This is what I do with my one-on-one clients over time, is building this capacity. There's ways that we can make discipline feel a little bit easier in our lives. And that has a lot to do with identity work, which is what I'll mention in the Inner Revolution immersion as well, the 5-week immersion I'm starting in January. And when we have this meaning of purpose and drive, and we've really committed ourselves to it, it doesn't feel as bad, right? So all of this Sagittarius energy is possibility, and it's asking for direction. That's what this new moon can offer. This Jupiter, once again, is squaring Chiron as well. So this is where this pain, this suffering is coming through. And I have a lot of compassion for that as well. But we need to be able to hold compassion for ourselves and reclaim a sense of agency. That becomes very, very important when we have anything in Aries. Saturn and Neptune are going in there as well. And when Saturn goes into Aries, man, he does not stand for your excuses, right? Saturn is debilitated in Aries. And when Saturn and Mars come together, like we just recently had, ooh, baby, right? I have a Saturn-Mars opposition in my chart. Once again, I love oppositions. I love Saturn. And I love working with opposition through my body. It's so, so amazing. But Saturn brings limitations because he cares so much. And when he does, I want you to think that there is a redirection happening because we are limited by the 3D reality. That's what Saturn reminds us of, which means that we have to remember our mortality. And that's what Saturn reminds us of. Do you want to keep living life this way? That's what the pause invites, right? I talked about this a little bit as well. And Neptune here as well, squaring, is now direct, removing the fantasy that we've held about, oh, maybe it'll come later. Maybe it'll just be something that arrives. Maybe not though. Are you willing to take that risk? You know? One last thing before we move over to the human design is I want you to notice there is a lack of air in this chart. The only planet we have in air is Pluto. So what does this mean? This is not about mental clarity right now. This is not about, oh, okay, I got to do this. This is a lunation in which the body speaks first. Your growth is only as real to the extent in which you are willing to face yourself. That's what this is showing us. Now, let's move into the human design. So in human design, this lunation is happening in gate 10. This is about the behavior of the self. Now, in the Gene Keys, this is the Gene Key book. It's also available in my book list, in my description. This goes from the shadow of self-obsession to the gift of naturalness. And I just want to read a little bit about this. He says, the emphasis of the 10th shadow is on the individual, which can be both a blessing and a curse. This is the part I love. He says, if we humans do not discover our own identity and uniqueness, we cannot transcend it and move our society to a higher level. The blessing is that the more different we each allow ourselves to be, the more we operate as a unity. This is one of the most beautiful of all human paradoxes, that only through our very diversity can we arrive at our unity. This is a gate. It's in the G center, which is about direction and love and our identity. And it's called the behavior of the self, right? This is a gate of authenticity. And authenticity is not something that is found through mental clarity. It's simply not. I know that I'm here to help people become their most authentic selves. That purpose or meaning that I've created is open to change, right? I'm not set in that, but that's what feels so true to me right now. And the way that I figured that out was by effing around and finding out. Doing the work, trying this. Okay, that didn't work. Putting in the effort, being committed. Discipline is being able to sit and do the hard work even when there's no visible reward. And I can tell you guys, like, I don't want to get super into my journey over the last 6 months where, you know, I quit my career. But it's not been easy internally. You guys see a snippet, but there's been a lot of inner work I've had to do so consistently. I'm doing a lot behind the scenes to facilitate being able to hold that dream, to be able to have the capacity. With every workshop that I do, it's like I just had a quantum leap after my last workshop. It's wild. But it's not a quantum leap that just happened. It's a quantum leap that I worked my butt off for. So anyway, what I want to say about this is this really brings me into Chiron in Aries and the pain of authenticity, the pain of individuation, right? This is the goal in depth psychology's individuation. There is a pain of having to look and stop avoiding who we really are and not go into the conditioned self, but the true self. There is a pain in that. Us judging other people and how they choose to do things is actually inhibiting us from inhabiting our own uniqueness in so many ways. That's why I'll always say this. When I talk about my work, how I use astrology, how I use human design, how I don't use it for predictive, how I teach you how to sit with to get clear on the process of sitting with uncertainty, because all of life is uncertainty. When I talk about how my work is about that versus other people who use astrology in other ways, it's in no way ever shaming them. And if they or anyone else feels shamed by them, by that remark, it's not my responsibility, because I know my intention. I have no idea what their goals are. I have no idea what they're trying to do. I just can get super clear on mine. And I have to let go of the responsibility of other people's expectations on me or what they think I said, right? I mean, that's a prison in itself. And here's the thing about agency and authenticity. We have to be willing to give it to other people as well. We have to be able to let people be who they are if we want to allow ourselves to be who we are and stop trying to change everybody around us. Now, the gift of naturalness is really beautiful as well, as he mentions here. To be natural means to be yourself. I often talk about this spiritual circle, right? And most of us, when we get into the spiritual world, we learn about the top half, which is the masculine half. Ascension, we are all one, love, unity. What happens when we are attuned to this, but we don't have what's underneath the surface, which happens through shadow work, which happens through the body's intelligence? This is where we find out who we are. Before we have a self to dissolve, we need to have a self. And when we bypass this, we are lost, we are confused, we are wandering without enjoying the wandering. You can wander. This is Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius is all about wandering and learning and expansion and coming to the edges of its own growth and expanding the horizon and meeting things that are unfamiliar in order to grow. But when it doesn't feel good, is when we haven't done this work to know who we are. And you can't get that through mental clarity. This new moon is not about just building a dream for dream's sake. A dream to make money, right? Scarcity around money is so much deeper than money. It is a bottomless pit. If we believe that money will solve our problems, it will not. Money is great. When you have value to exchange for it, money is great. When it makes it feel purposeful. When you are yourself, I had this workshop, Co-Creating the Cosmos. It was all about purpose. It was about embodiment of purpose, astrology and human design. And it's available as well if you want the replay. It was 3.5 hours. A lot of that was about connecting to a deeper sense of purpose, and purpose is not the same as work. This new moon, in a lot of ways, is also kind of like this quiet whisper that's coming through in this discomfort that says, I can't keep living like this anymore. And your job right now is to just listen. I'm noticing too, Mercury is squaring the nodes in Sagittarius. So this is the choices that you're making now, the way that you speak, interpret, and commit. It's there's some fated choices coming up. Mercury in Sagittarius is debilitated, right? Because it has a tendency to get really big mentally, but have a harder time because Mercury wants details, right? So it's asking us to be able to not control the mind, but not let the mind run way ahead of where we are right now. Once you release the illusion that this dream just is going to happen to you, the real path becomes actionable for you. And this becomes less conceptual and more real in your body, and you won't be running to get ahead because you'll see the importance and the gift of the present. That's the gift of this new moon. The cosmos are saying, stop drifting. It's time. Let's just finish this out with some tarot. I just want to give an advice card. That's it. I always say that, but then sometimes I end up doing an outcome card as well. Knight of Cups. Reconnecting to the romance of life. Let's redirect Neptunian romance and illusions, as we may say. I said earlier that we may romanticize waiting. Let's romanticize our lives. if we are creating and crafting a story with our lives, with every decision we make, let's dream big and allow ourselves to connect emotionally to that dream so that it becomes inspiring to us in some way. Inspired action becomes achievable. Yeah, there's something dreamy about romanticizing our lives into the story. This is why there is, what I love about the Galactic Center is that it collapses duality. When we are moving from a dualistic mindset, we can look at things like death bad, stories bad, stories of that we're making in our lives, illusions bad. But this reminds us that we can actually use the story aspect, the journey aspect of Sagittarius that's in the sky, and instead of making it be meaningless and this wandering that isn't about bringing anything to form, we can romanticize it and craft our own. We hear this make yourself the own main character of your story. What would the main character do in order to achieve the goal? Sometimes by depersonalizing it, it can make it easier, especially if we're in a state of pain or suffering. All right, fine, I'll do an outcome card. Gosh, you have to bully me into it as I fully bully myself into it. No, it's not bullying at all. It's I get joy out of this for sure, and sharing this moment with you guys and seeing okay, so let's romanticize our lives and dream. Allow ourselves to dream, but don't drift, right? The Knights are action takers. So yeah, dream, but don't drift. I like that. And an outcome card here, please. A deeper connection to our inner world, right? This is star acumen, inner vision. A deeper connection to our subconscious. A deeper understanding of our own subconscious blocks. I'll tell you this, when you start taking action on your dreams, especially in business is very spiritual. You get faced with your freaking blocks. There is no running from this when you're an entrepreneur. You are holy crap, I didn't realize how many blocks I had. And that's been my journey. Maybe yours is different, but when you start actually moving towards your goal and taking action, you'll start realizing, this is the thing. So we wait for the clarity to take action, but it's actually the action that brings clarity. Please join my mailing list if you want to be informed about what is coming up. There's a lot of things coming up in my world in the next several weeks and month or so, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. So join my mailing list. You get a free shadow work guide, and also you get another freebie after you sign up. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, of course, I have the link for that down below as well. And I'll see you next time.